Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next tune is called Taylor, which is a carnival tune from Trinidad and Tobago. Actually, my band. Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, thank you again, Chike, for having me. And,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Can
Harry.
we have you give us one more while we're waiting for other people to come? Please. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
after a first week, they are not waiting. She on my main informative.
Okay, Emmanuel, there's some, can you,
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Chike. Great way to start the day. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Almaz Negash. I am the founder and the executive director of the African Diaspora Network. On behalf of all of us at the African Diaspora Network, I welcome you to this, I think it's the fourth webinar series that we've had since July, August, September, October, November. This is amazing. I still am just delighted to see everyone join us every month as we cannot get to meet in person as we always do in January. It is unfortunate that we have to do this by Zoom, but on the other hand, I'm very happy because it has enabled us to bring people from the continent that we were not able to do when we were meeting in person. So there's always a silver lining, and I think that's probably the upside for ADN. Thank you again for being with us this morning. I'm not going to say much, but I do need to say thank you to my team and the funders who make this possible, to all of you for participating, to our champions and to our members, because this is a lot of work and it can only be done when you get the support of the community and our diaspora and Friends of Africa. We exist because of you. I also believe that today it's very unique because I wrote down yesterday how many countries are represented, and I wrote them down because I just felt so compelled by the fact that Africa has 54 to 55 countries, depending on who's counting. And every time we are together at ADN, I love to see Africa become one. So we become one family, regardless of which country we come from. Not only just Africans in Africa, but actually Friends of Africa who love the continent. They become one part of that humanity. And that in itself is incredibly powerful. So thank you for making it possible for us. So today, actually, we do have people from Nigeria, South Africa, Malawi, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Botswana, United Kingdom, of course, Ecuador, which is really amazing, Canada, Zambia, Ethiopia, Eritreans, and many more. And so thank you everyone for making this possible. And of course, my American friends and family. We are here because you believe in what we do. We have a shared vision, and this is only possible when we can come together. I will have our own board member and our own main source of income for ADN, one of the most wonderful supporter in my life, Agnieszka Winkler and Artland, her husband, just love these people. She will be speaking about ADN, but what I like to do is, I would like to just say thank you to our speakers. So for example, I have tried to get Patrick to come to speak to do keynote presentation at ADIS for the past several years. I know Megan is here, Megan McDonald, she knows, I've been reaching out to her, and of course he was always busy, but I was inspired by Patrick several years ago when I saw him speak at Stanford University. He wasn't just only speaking about his work, but also his life's mission, his family. He was just so generous with his heart and his mind. So we are very honored. I personally am just honored to have you. He's also an embodiment of what diasporans can do when they put their hearts and minds together. He created something that I am absolutely willing and able to support Ashesi University, because his value is reflective of the students that are coming from Ashesi. I'm going to say something about this. Last time, Megan invited me and I participated in a deep dive at Ashesi University. One of the students was, I asked a question, What about when you guys come out of HSC and you don't get a job, the job market is something to that extent. And the person, the young man responded to me, oh no, HSC does not train us to get jobs. It trains us to create jobs. And that was the most transformative way of thinking about the oneself, that you don't depend on others to create jobs for you, but you actually learn to create jobs so that you can also hire other people. So thank you for what you do. Thank you to you, Megan, everyone at HSC University. The other person, of course, is Kofi. Kofi is someone I go to, the CEO of AAI, whenever I am in need of something, and especially ideas and share some of my challenges. He's always there for me. He supports ADN financially, and he supports me morally. And thank you, Kofi. Thank you for making it happen. I know you're busy, but we're very delighted to have you. Stefan is someone I met several years ago through a very good friend of mine at Facebook, and we have become fast friends. She is inspiring beyond words. One has to know who she is to understand what I'm talking about. Stefan, thank you for what you do. She's all about education. She has been a champion for online learning and other ways of educating people, but Africa is where her heart is, and she's investing her time and her resources, and now she has a big job with Macron in France as the head of the Digital Africa. And thank you for being with us, Stefan. Diane, I met a few weeks ago, and MasterCard Foundation, thank you for your support for this event this morning. And great to have you, and I'm very much happy to know you. Damilede, I don't know you, we just met, and I'm looking forward to get that long-term relationship with Africa Leadership University, even though I have met Fred Swaniker many years ago. And just on Fred, Stefan suggested, oh, well, let's also bring Fred. I said, are you kidding me? We're gonna have 3 Ghanaians in one panel session. I'm not doing that. So yeah, we could have, so I actually said that to her because they are friends, but we will get him some other time. I don't have anything else to say. My only housekeeping is that please remember to mute, give our speakers a chance to be heard. And then I would let the floor go to Agnieszka. Thank you for what you do and for everything.
Well, thank you, Almaz. Thank you for everything that you do. I guess
a while ago now, but it's an important.
Can everybody hear? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm very happy to be with all of you today, and I see some faces and some names from the previous ADIS21 colloquiums. So I have to say it's a true honor and a very great pleasure to be a board member of ADN and to watch the progress and the real contribution that ADN has made in the last 10 years. And you heard me correctly, ADN is now 10 years old, and that's a major milestone for any organization, as you can understand. So please join me in congratulating Almaz, the founding director, and her team.
Thank you.
Really, truly owe her a debt of gratitude for the many inspiring conferences, the ability to connect, and the network itself that she's created, and now the beginnings of working collectively to be of true service to our members and also to help the continent. And I can speak to this personally because my father spent a good deal of his life organizing the Polish diaspora after World War II. So I was a personal witness to the power of community organizing of a diaspora, and now I'm seeing it all over again with the African diaspora. So please join us on December 1st for a community virtual celebration. You're all invited. Check your email. I know you get lots of emails from ADN, but they are all important. Now, just another a word before we got to get to the main event. ADIS21, which, as you know, had to be reimagined because of COVID, is reflecting our new strategic direction, which is to focus on 4 key areas of special interest. And those are education, healthcare, connectivity, and finance. And that's kind of how the subjects of each of the monthly programs were organized. But we have ambitions to do a lot more. And we can do a lot more with your help and support. So the first thing we need everyone here to do today is, the minute this conference is over, please join ADN. Just go to the website and sign up as a formal member and pay your dues. I noticed already that Almaz posted the link because one of you actually asked. So please, that is your action item for today. Now, the next is to move to more collective action. We need time and talent and treasure. So I'd like to recommend to you that you consider giving yourselves a Christmas present this year and make that present a donation to ADN. All the conferences, the networking opportunities, the possible initiatives on the continent, they all need financial resource, and we need your support. So thank Almaz this year by being on our 10th anniversary by being Santa Claus, and help us bring even more wonderful programs both to you and to the continent. And might I add, there is no gift that's too small or too large. And so now that the commercial has run, let's get to the main event. So Patrick, it is a pleasure to meet with you again. And as I read all of your materials and your background, I was struck by the fact, the question, what inspired you to leave a successful software engineering career in the US and go back to Africa and start a university of all things? Patrick, I actually, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, so sorry, I was mute.
Yeah.
So, so, you know, the short answer, what inspired me to return was the birth of my son, but also the timing of his birth. He was born shortly after crises in Rwanda and Somalia, and the news was full of, you know, horrific stories coming out of Africa. And it seemed to me that we needed to change that narrative. And the way to change that narrative was to make a contribution in a transformation on the continent, a positive transformation. And, you know, I should also say that, you know, when my son was born, the first few months, I wasn't getting enough sleep. So that may have contributed a bit to
Yeah. All parents can certainly relate to that.
So anyway, you know, it got to a point where I realized that there was an urgency in the work that needed to be done, and that people like me who had had opportunities and a great education should be part of the solution. And this was going to be my contribution, my life's work, really. Returning to Ghana and helping develop a new generation of leaders.
Thank you for that. And actually, I am involved with a couple of universities on the Board of Trustees, so I know what a difficult project that really is. But all the way back in 2007, literally just 8 years after the founding of Achesi, a UC Berkeley study found that Achesi is rated by both local and multinational companies as #1 in Ghana. I mean, that 8 years, #1 in Ghana, and the quality of the curriculum, the career preparation, the communication skills, the maturity and professional skills and ethics of the students. So to what do you attribute the ability to create that much of success in such a short period of time?
Well, I would say that it all begins with the vision of the organization and the people that you assemble at the organization to execute that vision. And for us, you know, right from the very beginning, we were very clear that we weren't just building a university, we were building an institution that was about helping to transform a continent. And so our purpose, our reason for existence was a transformation of the continent. And everything we did, we sort of led with that. And, you know, this mission of educating ethical entrepreneurial leaders, we led with that. And so if you sat in on some of the recruiting trips to high schools in Ghana, and you heard our admissions staff talk to young children about why they might want to come to Achesi, we didn't talk about, you know, the benefit to them or getting jobs or this sort of thing. We talked to them about the mission. And we were very, very clear about this also with hiring people onto the team. And so I think what happened was we built this team that was incredibly focused on one purpose.
Mhm.
And we sort of executed with a very strong set of values and with the faith that if we did that, that success would come and that excellence would come. And so that's what I attribute this to. It's just the clarity of the vision, the intensity of it, and then the team that we assembled, the students that we admitted to execute that mission.
Mhm. It's interesting because actually your entire focus and even Almaz's comment at the very beginning was about don't train to get a job, but train to create jobs. It all sort of revolves around the concept of leadership. And we've certainly been having major discussions in the US recently about the importance of leadership. So what made you understand from the very beginning that leadership was kind of the key?
You know, I had a number of conversations with friends and family in Ghana where we would take different problems and try to dissect them, right? So we would take a problem and ask, why is this the way it is?
Mm-hmm.
And this question, why, is very important, right? And when you ask that question, you get a set of answers. And then we take each of those answers and ask why again. And you get another set of answers. And we'll take those answers and ask why again. And then always we would seem to converge on decision making. We would always converge on the people who are in a position to make things different who didn't, or the people who are in a position of influence who are corrupt. And so I had this sort of aha moment where I thought, everything seems to be sort of getting back to leadership and decision making across the board. Who are these leaders and where do they come from? And these leaders were all the people who had had a post-secondary education in Ghana. And in the mid-1990s, when I was asking these questions and having these conversations, the data showed that only 2 to 5% of college-age individuals went to college in Ghana. So it's a very relatively small cohort.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I thought, well, if we can influence how that cohort is educated, if we can influence the educational system to produce ethical leaders, citizen leaders, to produce people who are problem solvers, who would question the status quo and have the courage to try and change things, that you fast forward 20, 30 years and you change the country when these 20-some-year-olds are in their 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of how I came about this idea that maybe starting a university would be the most impactful thing that I could do. And not just a university, but really a leadership institute, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're interested in actually scaling this approach throughout Africa, but of course there are similarities and differences country by country. So what were the characteristics of the situation in Ghana that helped you do that perhaps may or may not help in other countries?
Well, Ghana is an interesting place. First of all, I'm from Ghana, so I knew the lay of the land in Ghana. So that was sort of a natural for me to come to.
Mm-hmm.
But Ghana had this sort of interesting combination of a great need for an intervention, but also significant momentum in some important areas. So Ghana had a democracy that was thriving.
Mm-hmm.
It had free press, so the media was free, people could express their opinions. And when we spoke with people at, children in high school or their parents, there's this hunger for education and a hunger to sort of get the best education possible. And so Ghana was sort of at this inflection point of need and momentum. And one of the really significant places which actually made it very possible was up until about the mid-1990s, the government of Ghana did not permit private universities in the country. All universities were public, and the chancellor was the head of state, Well, that had changed because the government wanted to see more people educated, had opened up to private universities, had set up an accreditation system. So there were all these things that were sort of in place that we could enter early and get started.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you're also preparing people for all types of lives when they're done. And there's this big issue around the world about balancing liberal arts and the professional pieces of a university. And I'm sure you're very aware of the constant conflict there. How are you thinking about business, computer science, engineering, and also liberal arts, and making it work together to go back to the point that you made originally? Is it all about decision making in the end result?
Right. So yeah, I followed that debate ever since we started, and
Yeah.
frankly, I think it's a false choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing is, one of the things we did was we did some focus groups with leaders in Ghana who were in the private sector, in government, in military, the social sector, in faith-based organizations. We brought them all together and asked them what characteristics and capabilities they would want to see from university graduates.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is the set of characteristics that they described and capabilities spoke to both of these things. So the things that the liberal arts gives you, the ability to deal with ambiguity, the ability to approach problems from different perspectives, the ability to communicate in powerful ways, and to be a critical thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And they also wanted so-called hard skills, finance and engineering and IT skills and so on. And so for them, they don't see this dichotomy that a lot of people in academia debate about.
Right.
So we decided, we're going to do all of the above, because actually to create the kinds of citizens and leaders that our country needs, we do have to do all of the above.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting because in the kind of modern scientific world, specialization is a big issue. And in order to specialize, you have to go deeply and narrowly. So how can you in a 4-year curriculum actually satisfy that need for going deep at the same time, kind of covering everything else you need to be able to be a critical thinker?
So I chanced upon a description that some Harvard faculty use in describing this, where they say they're trying to educate T-shaped individuals. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
a capital T, right? So they want people who have breadth, and they also want people who have depth. And so the way we look at it is, in any particular field, there's so much information now and so much new knowledge and so much accumulated knowledge that it is virtually impossible for any individual to have it all, or even for teams to have it all. But what you need to do is you need to give people a breadth, and you need to give them some core concepts and give them the curiosity and ability to continue to learn for the rest of their lives. And to go deeply over a long period of time, because the depth is going to come with time, including time after college, right? And so that's sort of the structure that we've done, is to say we're going to make sure that students have a curriculum that gives them a perspective that covers, well, not a perspective, multiple perspectives, gives them the ability to know how to learn, gives them the ability to think critically,
Mm-hmm.
that switches on their curiosity, and then we get them to start depth in some area, whether it's engineering or computer science or business management, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then set them off on their way, understanding that they're going to continue to seek that depth that they need.
So that would actually get
to look at, they need to scan more broadly than just their own narrow fields.
Okay. So just out of curiosity, do the majority of your students then go on for graduate degrees, or do they go straight into the workforce?
The majority of them go straight into the workforce. About 10% will go on to grad school. About 5% will, no, actually it's more than 5% now, more close to 10% are starting their own businesses. And wherever they go, we want them to have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So if you go into a business, you should be looking for ways to grow that business, exploring new opportunities and creating new jobs within that business. And building the networks that you might need in the future to start your own business at a later date.
Now, ethics is also a big piece of what you incorporate into your curriculum. And of course, some people feel that a course on ethics is good enough. Others feel that ethics has to be situational and has to be woven in throughout the entire curriculum. What's your thought on that?
We go with the latter. We don't have a course called ethics. We have several seminars called leadership seminars, and there's ethics woven into those, as you might imagine. But even across the curriculum, you know, in the professional disciplines that they're studying, we're talking about ethics. And more importantly, ethics is woven into the fabric of life on our campus. I think that's probably the most important place to build ethics in. So that's how we deal with it. Now, within one of the leadership seminars, we have a module called Giving Voice to Values. And that module is basically a simulations seminar where students are confronted with ethical dilemmas, and then they have to think through how they deal with them and role play actually tackling those ethical dilemmas. And some of those, the cases that they study in that seminar are cases that alumni bring from the real world, things that they've actually encountered. And the idea is that if students, just as a pilot learns by getting into a flight simulator and reacting to certain conditions, then you think that with the belief that if and when they encounter it in actual flight, they're more likely to respond appropriately. We give our students these simulations with the hope that because they've practiced dealing with them, that when they encounter these scenarios in real life, that they'll react appropriately as well. And that is the closest thing we have to a course that has the title ethics, right? It's actually, but it's called Giving Voice to Values.
Oh, okay. Now, sort of switching into kind of technology and education, because that's what the panel will be about. You know, you have a beautiful campus. I mean, it's really gorgeous, and I assume your classes are normally in person. How has COVID affected your ability to teach and learn? How are you handling the situation?
We switched to a 100% online format 2 weeks after COVID entered Ghana. And, you know, part of that switch was, it was not so hard for us, interestingly, because we were already using technology quite a bit. Some courses were doing a flipped classroom model. Okay. We had a learning management system that all faculty were using and students were using. And so, you know, the only new thing was everybody's now on Zoom, right? But a lot of the infrastructure to enable online learning was already in place. And what we did was we suspended classes for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, we got students properly situated, either got them at home or in a host family if they couldn't leave Ghana because borders were closed. And then we also did sort of workshops for the faculty to brush up on online learning. And then we switched it on and everybody got on online. Now, we had to do things like, you know, make sure that every student had a laptop. We purchased data bundles for students so that everyone would get access to data for students who lived in areas where they didn't have access to a network, we helped relocate them to a place where they would actually have access to a data network so they could connect. There were some students who were in very difficult living situations. So for example, if somebody's living in a 1-bedroom home with a large family, doing online work, even if they have a laptop, is difficult, right? So some students like that, we had to help relocate them to an area where they could have, you know, a quiet space where they could do online work. So we had to do a lot of interventions to enable this. There were also students whose families had very difficult financial situations, and the lockdown, which lasted 3 weeks here, made it even more difficult. So we had to give them cash grants, just even for things like feeding and just sort of making ends meet with their families. Mm-hmm. So that's how COVID affected us in the early days.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have a couple of questions from the chat. U.S. higher education has had a crash course in the use of technology, and Ashesi has a desire, I believe, to scale. And I'm wondering, you know, what are your thoughts about the use of technology, scaling? Can you do that effectively across the continent? You know, what's your thinking there?
Well, certainly one of the things that we're recognizing is that the online format can be quite effective, not only for reaching students, but also for getting faculty, right? So we've always had visiting faculty from the United States and Europe. And interestingly, with COVID, these last couple of semesters, we've had more quote unquote visiting faculty, right? Visiting electronically, because it's easier for them, right? And so
just like it was easier for you to visit us.
right, exactly. And you know, one of the things that we always said to ourselves is you can only grow as quickly as you can find good people to work on your team. And so the fact that online enables us to get more people actually enables that kind of growth. But beyond scaling through electronic means, one of the things that we're actively pursuing is scaling our ideas and our approach by working with other universities. And so we have a project called the Education Collaborative that's been running for 3 years now, and that's about to start to scale up starting in 2021, where we are actively reaching out to other universities and we're sharing curriculum, pedagogy, the things that we're doing in student services, career placement, the things we're doing with design thinking and entrepreneurship, and how we are fostering a values-based campus and values-based educational institution. So we're sharing very actively with other universities. And this year, I think something like 145 universities joined us in the collaborative.
Wow.
We hope that this will grow and this will become a community of practice where we're all learning from each other. And that's another way to achieve scale, is using the energies and the resources and knowledge of other people who are already situated all across the continent.
Well, this is really very impressive, and we're getting close to our allotted time, which is unfortunate because we could talk about these issues probably all day. But before we move on to the panel discussion, I think it would be very interesting for this audience to know, how can the diaspora actually get involved in a more meaningful way with some of the work that you're doing? Because it clearly is something that would be very important to the whole continent.
Well, I'll tell you that the diaspora, people in the diaspora who have engaged with us have been incredibly helpful. And it's all the ways that you might imagine. It's people who are lending their talent. So coming and teaching for a semester, or if they're passing through, just spending a couple weeks mentoring students. We've had people in the diaspora who've supervised capstone projects of students. We have people in the diaspora who have donated to the institution. All of these actions are incredibly helpful and important to us. And I encourage all of us, all those in the diaspora, to continue to seek those ways of supporting important institutions on the continent. You know, and I'd also like to give a shout out to actually to Kofi Penting and AAI, who have been very helpful, you know, supporting scholarships for students from all across the continent to come to Ashesi. That kind of support really does change the lives of individuals here, and makes our institutions stronger.
Well, we're coming to a close here shortly, and I have to say that this is a fascinating session, and there are some things that you've talked about that are not only valuable for the continent, but actually it makes you a little treasure for global education as well. And that some of the things that you're doing is we could all learn from you. So I appreciate very much all of your comments, and thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Almaz.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. And I hope, Patrick, you stay with us. Yes,
yes, I will.
Okay, because Kofi will be very happy if you stay. Kofi, this is all yours. Thank you, everybody.
All right, well, good morning and good afternoon to everybody. And Patrick, it's always good to hear you reflect on these kinds of issues. We have a terrific panel, and we want to have some time to work through a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions that I can see in the chat. Unfortunately, Stefan, Eloise has to leave in about 30 minutes, I believe. So I'm going to try to make sure that we start with her and give her a couple of chances to share her views before she has to go and teach a class. So the format's going to be each of us will introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to pose a question to the panel to get it started. So I don't need to introduce myself now since both Patrick and Almaz have. So Stefan, Louise.
Hello, Kofi. Thank you for acknowledging publicly my other commitment. I'm so sorry I have to leave that early, and I want to thank Almaz and Megan and Agnieszka and the whole ADN network, because I think this is a really interesting panel, and I'm honored to be sharing this panel with all my fellow panelists.
And Diane?
Thank you, Kofi. Hi, everyone. My name is Diane Kwame, and I would like also to thank Almaz and the whole network of ADN for this great opportunity to contribute. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Demilade?
All right. Thank you, Kofi, and hi, everyone. Just as everyone has said, it's an honor to be on this panel, and it's an exciting one. I am Demilade from the African Leadership University. I am faculty at the University in International Business and Trade and Entrepreneurship. And so I'm excited to share in this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you each for making those brief introductions. So where I thought we could start is unplanned by anybody. We've actually had a global experiment where most schools had to shut down, and even those that have opened for periods of time have had to adjust. So it's actually been an unusual time to really take a look at online education, because it became the option for so many students. And I think we all went in to this period with some assumptions about online. Lots of people have theories and hopes about online. We've actually now had an experiment where in a vast number of countries at the same time, schools were closed and people were struggling to figure out how to cope when online was perhaps the only option. So what I wanted to do was ask each of the panelists to really focus on what have they learned that maybe has been informed by this experiment that maybe has changed how they're thinking about this. So Stefan and Louise?
Thanks. Thanks, Kofi. I like this question very much because I think for a lot of, I mean, almost everybody, COVID was a major decentering, I mean, forced us into decentering our approach of both traditional ways of working, teaching, and just interacting with people. So when I actually, to be very specific, I moved from an online education background, so working for Open Classroom, which is an online education platform with an interesting proposition, fully online model, competency-based, and training youth to digital jobs, training 3.5 million students every month to digital jobs with a degree-based education. Anyway, I switched from this position to Executive Director of Digital Africa. So Digital Africa is an initiative launched by President Macron, as Almaz just recalled, and whose mission is to equip African tech entrepreneurs with capabilities to design and scale digital innovation for the real economy. So we have both an investment aspect in our jobs and representing 130 million euros commitment from the French public funding, and non-financial activities, a lot of them dedicated to capacity building. So not so much education per se, but capacity building, technical assistance, but also access to fundings and investment. So I started on March 1st working at Digital Africa. And then March 15, all Europe was locked down and had to move to fully digitized, just a daily life. So for me, it was not so new, and I jumped easily in this new daily life on Zoom. However, I also very quickly noticed the limitation and the fatigue behind it. And also being a teacher myself, at Sciences Po and Sorbonne in Paris, and managing students. So both managing my professional life and my academic commitment, I could feel very strongly this Zoom fatigue and an intensity of moving to a fully 100% online model. Also, that's exactly where I was coming from. And it made me think a lot of, I think we would all agree to say that digital technology is more inclusive for many reasons, because, for distributed organization, for even for disabled. I am also myself, here I have a small hearing impairment. And to be honest, my first fully online classes were easier to interact with students because you can actually use the sound capacity more adaptively to your limitations. And so I think we would all agree that digital technology and digital education is a major, and as Patrick just showed very well, is a major, not only a necessity, but also opportunity for accelerating what we were already seeing. I also saw some limitations, such as when learning, both as when working. Digital technology and online interaction tend to break down our habits in very small pieces. We spend 1 hour on this Zoom and then 1 hour on another Zoom, and then and the fluidity that you would like to have, and that a lot of students and professional and human in general need to be able to really engage and share common worlds can be sort of break down as well. So just to finish, I would say, engineering our life so that we move to a fully online model, and even like reflecting on how can we build blended model that are more connected. I mean, that are still possible with a major online activity. I would say that there's 3 limits. One, that also HSC University has made an amazing work on, also ALU. I'll let Demilade maybe explain that, but regarding the balancing of skills, liberal education and professional skills, educating to basic skills at the same time as integrating digital literacy. So for me, moving to fully online education is, it means that we need to find a way and to better combine both basic skills education and digital literacies, because we know that basic skills education so far cannot just be fully online teaching and learning. Then I think, of course, infrastructure and access to network is definitely also one of the major limitations for this new fully online model after COVID, I would say. And one last aspect that is very also dear to my heart is how do we foster creativity, and how do we design attention healthy environment for both student but also professional, if we think of a way of looking at jobs as a lifelong learning experience as well. So how do we build healthy attention design environment so that we can continue enjoying the capacity of technology for distributing knowledge, capital, and know-how. And at the same time, we can also remain in this fluid sort of experience of both learning and working. So sorry, I was a little long, but since I have to leave very soon, I wanted to share these couple of ideas. Thank you, Kofi, for allowing me to do this.
No, thank you. That was fascinating. So Deanne, in addition to addressing this question, I thought that the fact that the MasterCard Foundation works, really focuses on certain countries. If there were some different lessons learned, depending on the country or region, it would be great to share that also. So please.
Thank you so much, Kofi, for this great question and for this addition as well. Let me start by stating that COVID-19, this crisis, has highlighted the importance of online learning in order to address the disruption in learning. But it is also highlighting the importance for having this option to reach people who are not able to come to a face-to-face classroom. And this is many more than just young people who are registered in universities and other institutions of learning. It is more about people who are not currently in the system, such as refugees in the refugees camp, women who are also in communities where they cannot go to regular school, and it is about young people who may not have dropped out of school and they are doing other things that will not allow them to come out because they will lose income, for example. So it is introducing the possibility of blended learning, which will have a large impact, if I can put that in that way, a large impact way beyond the problem of disruption of learning. Which is in front of us today. So for us in the MasterCard Foundation, investing in online learning is not only about responding to the disruption of classes because of COVID-19, it is about also building, resilience of education system for the future. So the e-learning initiative that I am leading at the Mastercard Foundation is all about strengthening the capacities of partner universities in our network to deliver high quality e-learning, but also inclusive e-learning, as Stephanie Louise mentioned this point earlier as well. So now we did a survey, and what we saw are 4 big needs to be addressed. So we did a survey across our network of partner universities. So we have 25 universities within our network with 11 African universities. So what we saw was first the need of for skills in instructional design, to convert content online, but also the need for skills in online pedagogy. Not only teaching, but also quality assessment and build insurance for those in education. That this is also a way of teaching and learning with also a positive outcome, if I can put that in that way. And also we saw a need of devices, as we noticed that. And this is very important because this is a medium that everyone in the space, in this space, will need. When we talk about online learning, you need to have the appropriate device. So in addition to that, we saw a need related to connectivity and also electricity. And most African institutions are facing, those 4 needs that I just mentioned. So this is very crucial. So the first 2 needs in instructional design and online pedagogy, these are areas where one can address for training, because this could be well aligned, with what we are doing in the development sector. But when it comes to the other needs, the 2 other needs related to connectivity and also devices and electricity, this is something where the experts, should lead, this area. And a question could be, where do you think the diaspora can make the biggest difference? Where do you see the diaspora to make this biggest difference, to allow, those youth and those students, to resume their studies and succeed? So this is one question that we might have today. And here is also one possibility. Why not the diaspora could partnering with universities in Africa in order to support them and help them, or mentoring, those students. But again, those big challenges related to connectivity and also electricity could be also an area. Thank you so much, Kofi. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, Demilade, what did you learn?
Yeah, what did I learn? I obviously learned a lot. Thank you, Kofi. And first, I should acknowledge Patrick as well, because working at ALU and having a similar mission with HSC, we, so to speak, sister universities, and so you see a lot of the things that Patrick mentioned about how they transitioned into online learning were the same kinds of steps that were taken at ALU and which the leadership took to really prepare students for online learning. And like Patrick said as well, we already deliver a blended mode of learning, and we already using technology to facilitate learning. But then one of the things I learned is that we collectively were not as prepared as we thought for online education at scale, right? Like many people have said, there are gaps that need to be filled. And these are gaps that are like Dan was saying, some of them have to do with readiness of faculty or readiness of instructors to design content or to teach in ways that are appropriate for online learning. But it's also about readiness on the side of the students as well. And readiness on the side of students, for example, goes all the way from students being able to manage their own time and being able to follow and keep track with what they're learning, to actually having the resources, that is having internet, having laptops, right? In our case, for example, we also had to either situate students or fly them back to their home countries. And so all of a sudden, there were students all over the continent who could not access internet, who could not access power, and couldn't be in the same time, in the same classroom or at the same time with their colleagues. And one of the things that this reinforced is really thinking about how we also conduct asynchronous learning, right? Giving students the opportunity to still be able to take a level of quality in terms of what they are learning, designing for that, but understanding that they will not be available because of some of these limitations that they have. And so this flexibility in how we design or how we deliver learning is one of the greatest things that I believe that I've learned from this. Personally, we did trainings even after transitioning for our faculty, and because we've been using Blended, we've been doing all these trainings for a while. But then myself and colleagues as well, I've had to experiment a lot in this process, learning best practices from across the continent and across the globe to see what really then suits this situation of online learning. Because let me say, for example, one of the things you should appreciate about the digital economy is that the digital economy puts a lot of power in the hands of the user, right? It's on demand. The user can decide, and students are not so different. So if we're thinking about education as a service that we give to students, right, then we're also thinking of them as consumers, so to speak, that have a say and a lot of power in how they are receiving this education. And so the concept of student-centered learning, which we've been discussing for, and that's a number of people have been advocating for quite a while, is very critical at this stage to think around how do we understand the realities that our students are facing? Because if we're going to scale this, then what it means is our students are going to come from different places across the continent or in different situations and scenarios. So how do we contextualize for them? How do we introduce that flexibility, right? The way that we had our strict classes, we need to change. We still need to maintain quality, but then we need to start thinking and engaging and involving students. So I'll give an example because I've been teaching all this period online, right? And so I realized, for example, that one of the ways to engage students more is to allow them to drive, to give a great extent of what I consider autonomy to discover and to learn. Because when we're in the classroom, it's easier for me to connect with them, to support them immediately. But when I can't see them, then I need to put them at a place where they have the agency and where they are actually doing things on their own, right, to be able to achieve the learning outcomes. So I become the custodian of delivering those learning outcomes, but then I now have to create the conditions that allow students to be able to do that. One more thing I'm going to say is about the question that I've seen coming up around the current world of work that we're in, especially with the digital economy. And one of the things I do at ALU as well is leading a number of digital economy programs and helping to equip students across a number of digital skills and readiness, right? And so this situation and where we are currently also brings to the fore the importance of digital skills for our students, right? Digital skills not only to access and to be able to learn online, but for work and for other parts of their lives that are going to be distributed the way that we see. So it's now distributed education, distributed workforce. And so it's important that we are teaching them that alongside. Maybe I'll continue this thought, but I'm going to stop for now and just, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So part of our topic, it's the context is investment, right? So are you thinking about how you would allocate resources or invest going forward as a result of your experience during this pandemic? Has it changed any ideas you have? So I'll start with you, Stefano Luis. Hello, Stefano Luis, are you there? Okay, I guess we have lost her. So Diane, do you want to take this question?
Sure, thank you, Kofi, for this question. So first of all, e-learning is not a new concept. And so we need to acknowledge, this and how to be more innovative, and also how to leverage this unique opportunity provided by the pandemic, which has accelerated the acceptance of virtual learning as a valuable alternative or complement to face-to-face instruction. So these are 2 points that guide also our thinking. And we at the Mastercard Foundation, we think and we believe that everyone deserves, and the right to learn and prosper. So advancing learning and education in communities which are marginalized or even the disadvantaged youth is very, very important to us. And having a focus on inclusion, when advancing e-learning or online learning within the partner universities, for example, is very important, because we really want to look into this inclusion aspect, which is very important to us. When we think about inclusion, we think about the refugees, we think about to people with disabilities, for example, and also young women and people, living in remote areas where they don't have, this opportunity to have access to internet, and also have access to devices and all those resources needed for e-learning. So here it is important, to mention that when we keep that in mind, and so we also are learning a lot from our network of partners, so it is important to highlight that we would like, to see this opportunity provided by COVID-19 to advance, this model of e-learning, which is high quality, meaning fit for purpose. So if we need to invest, in e-learning, it has to be fit for purpose, meaning relevant with relevant curriculum, as Demilade, was explaining before, but also, e-learning, which is also looking into those population groups that I just highlighted before, meaning the refugees, people with disabilities, and provide access, to all these people, not only the people who are in the normal education system, but also those people, who are not able, to join this system. So investing in e-learning should be also very important, by looking into high quality and inclusive e-learning. Thank you.
So just to follow up a little bit, so did you see country differences in terms of how successfully people were able to navigate the pandemic?
Sorry.
Yeah, so that question was for you, Diane. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Kofi, for this follow-up question. Yes, indeed. We notice some differences across, the different countries and the different institutions across those countries. And what is very important to highlight is the needs for connectivity and devices, which is very important in African institutions. And those components are very important to enable e-learning. So the differences that we notice are there. And also we think that we saw also some important challenges, faced in the need in instructional design and online pedagogy. Online pedagogy is very interesting here because I've been also a lecturer in my previous experience, and I remember, during these days, this mindset, which is strong, in some African institutions, among the faculty members to transition to online learning is very real, meaning how to facilitate this transition to online learning, and the shift of mindset, was very, very important. And this is something that we are looking into, and how to Hi, Kofi, could you hear me?
Okay, yes, we could. So I think somebody just muted. Okay. All right. So Demilade, can you, I know you have students coming from a number of different countries coming to ALU. I wanted to ask you to address two things. One is, how are you thinking about, is there any difference in how you're planning to invest now based on the lessons you've learned during the pandemic? And what were some of the differences you saw that were based on people's home countries and what the infrastructures are there?
Yes, thanks, Kofi. I think what we've seen is that, and I think I mentioned this, when students had to return home, we all of a sudden realized that many people are in places where infrastructure is poor and is very unavailable. In some countries, the cost of internet is extreme, and in some other countries, it's power, right? And so across board, there is a greater need for infrastructure and a focus on digital, right? Investment in connectivity across board. But I think for us as an institution, one of the things that we have been leaning more and doing is beginning to invest more in digital as a platform, right? And invest in learning management systems and approaches that can cut across our students, right? Even as we transitioned to online learning when COVID just came up, we started to also explore what are the, for example, low bandwidth, so to speak, technologies and ways that students could be able to access learning if they were away from the country, because then that would matter to students who couldn't afford internet. We sent bundles to students, for example, and we still send to a number of students in different countries because it's obviously hard. But then so digital, ensuring that these digital platforms that we are now developing are easy to use and to access, right? But also ensuring that we are designing in a way and offering learning in a way that also optimizes the time that students, for example, have to spend on the platform, the time that they have to, that they spend on their own. So maybe interacting or completing assignments, right? So that reduces, or what I consider the cost of that technology on technology or connectivity costs on them. And so these are areas that we're continuing to talk about and explore daily to make it possible for students across the continent to still be able to continue without falling behind, because a great risk is that some students might fall behind, and we have those cases where we are having to provide extra support to some students. Just recently, some of my students in Tanzania had internet issues, and they couldn't connect for a week or two of classes, right? And so what it means as well is that on my side as a faculty member, I'm looking for ways to support the students so that they are not falling behind. I'm looking for ways to provide some of the content that they would have had to learn in the classroom, but are not available to learn. So this is one of the things that's important to us as an institution at this moment here. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I'm hoping Patrick is still on the line. Are you available, Patrick?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, wonderful. So I thought since we're down one panelist, I thought I would take advantage of the fact that you're here. I think everybody would love to really hear if there were some lessons you learned, some things that were new to you based on this experience with the pandemic, about in the context of what you assumed online could do and what you actually found out that it could do.
Well, to be honest, we hadn't made any assumptions about what online can or cannot do. We had some limited experience with it. We had situations where we had synchronous courses with universities in the United States and Canada, you know, as an intercultural exchange, right? So that was where we had done live video classes. So going in and having it be 100% for all classes all the time was new to us. And, you know, the first semester we were pleasantly surprised, actually, that students coped very well. Faculty made the switch very quickly. This second semester, we're starting to see some strains with it, right? And the specific strains are that, you know, part of the work at Ashesi, for example, is a lot of teamwork. And now students are working in teams that cross time zones. And so organizing a team across time zones is new for them. I mean, this is something that they're having to learn to do, how to schedule the right time and so on. And it's a challenge, sort of that online collaboration in groups of people. The second thing that's starting to be a strain is there seems to be increasing sense of stress from so much screen time, right? So screen time has dramatically increased when all your classes are online, you're doing the reading with electronic books, you're doing your teamwork online, you're doing your assignments online, you're doing exams online. I mean, just if we thought that screen time was too high before COVID, now it's really escalated, and some students are starting to feel the strain of that. And so that's a new thing that we've learned. And then there's also, you know, a few students that are feeling sort of the strain of just isolation, working alone at home, and missing the on-campus experience.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Diane, we're getting some questions from the audience, and one of them is about online and the future of work. And is online education helping to prepare people for the jobs of today and tomorrow? I thought that might be an interesting thing for you to try to address.
Thank you so much, Kofi, for this great question again. And indeed, the future of work and online learning are strongly connected, especially now. And one thing which is important to look for, you know, when developing those curriculum or the content, you know, online, it will be important to ensure that those content design, you know, incorporate the perspective from the private sector, because they need also to be aligned, you know, with the needs from the labor market, if I can put that in that way, and be ensure that the content has demand-led. And one thing also that we learned through the survey that we conducted is the acceptance of online degrees by the private sector or by the private sector actors. And this is something that we will need also to pay attention to, because we could have, you know, some question regarding the curriculum, the quality of the curriculum and the relevance of those curriculum, and how those students, you know, the type of condition where they were able, you know, to learn. And this is where also it is important to think about how in this environment we can think about the future of work. I think Patrick from HEC started, you know, this webinar very well by stating we are not teaching, you know, students for asking for a job, but for creating jobs themselves. And the curriculum should be focused, you know, on this mindset of entrepreneurship, which is critical to create a job in Africa, but also dignified and fulfilling jobs in Africa. So this would be my contribution, but maybe Patrick or Demilade, would you like to add on this point as well? Thank you.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, either one of you have anything to add?
Nothing further to add from my side. This is Patrick.
I think I would just say, in addition to what Diana said, because she's expressed that so well, is the opportunity with online learning to give students or the skills to cope in this, should I say, volatile is not the word, but ever-shifting world of work, right? Because when you think about how students attend to online learning, a lot of the weaknesses, so to speak, that we couldn't pick up when students were in person, right? Especially skills like self-management, learning how to learn and being able to develop your own path towards learning. I think that online learning exposes some of that, and the design for that, or the kind of content that allows students to do that, might not be there. Because when you think about the statistics of online learning in itself, there's a reason that completion rates are so low in terms of courses that people take online, right? Because it in many ways doesn't have the support structure that the institution or the university or the in-person space has. But students are not going to have that support structure when they go into the world of work, right? So when online learning exposes some of those realities, right? And now I see my students, they they can make a decision, come to class or go to work, but they can make a decision to manage those things together and be able to immediately also transfer. So another interesting thing about online learning and just being and students not being on campus, I think it's great for students to be on campus. I think it's great for a number of reasons, but also you see that I see a number of my students working and as they go to school, right? And the opportunity for me as a teacher is to be able to connect what I'm teaching them to what they're doing at work. And I think a number of people have said this earlier, and I think the way the LU curriculum is also structured is to prepare leaders for this world of work, to prepare leaders that are able to bring those skills. But then we have that opportunity to use with online learning, we have the opportunity to use the world where students are as a reference, right, as a learning lab of sorts, and to draw some of that into the classroom and say, how are you practicing this? How are you, and think about the experiences that students have, because students are not going to, in the way the traditional system works, students will have to finish a 4-year degree, for example, except for institutions where they do internships, like we do at LU. Students will have to finish a 4-year degree before they can go to work and start putting some of those skills to work. But then if they are getting the skills, and some of them in this process are in the middle of being able to apply them at some level of work, it doesn't have to be intense full-time work, but the reality is actually we see students doing this work because students come from different backgrounds. They need to support themselves, need to support their families. And these are the things we're going to face, especially when we start scaling online learning, for example. There's going to be many students, and there are many students who need to support their families and who need to work at the same time they're schooling. And so for us as educators, the question is, how do we integrate the world of work as a lab and pattern whatever we are teaching as something that students can go practice or can find that meaning as they also go through their daily work, because I believe that would also be a great way to bring engagement into learning, right? I teach a course called Digital Strategy, and it's been exciting to see students actually also go through this COVID period, but many of them are either interning online, some of them have to work still, and some of them have to be involved in digital work and are working with other businesses and supporting businesses with digital transition, either as an intern. And this comes into the class, this comes back into the class as something that we're able to discuss, right? And able to practice in a meaningful way that is connected to preparing them. So I think that there are those opportunities, and these are just some of them, yeah.
Thank you, Ade. So another question that's come in is whether or not the pandemic has shown us that we haven't been leveraging alumni networks enough, that there's a lot more we can do with alumni networks. Demilade, maybe we'll start with you. And I don't know if Diane, any of the universities you support, you've seen any information about that. And of course, Patrick, if you want to weigh in, that'll be great.
I was almost going to skip that one because we're a pretty young university and we have maybe 2 sets of alumni, and we're in the early stages of building that alumni relationship and interaction. But I think there is a lot of opportunity to, even when I think about what the alumni network becomes over the years, there is a lot of opportunity. But even at this stage, and some of there might be ways to allow alumni to be able to provide support remotely to students, and we've seen some of that either through talks or through sessions that alumni can have with students, right? Maybe our alumni are not at the place where they can drive much more meaningful engagement. But I think at the moment, some of the ways that we can tap into that, and I think there's a lesson that we are learning as well, to build that as we go, to ensure that we continue to engage the alumni in this manner. I will just then pass it on to, someone else. Thank you.
Deanne, do you have any comment on the question?
Thank you, Kofi and Emilade, for this. This is an interesting question, and what we learned from this pandemic is the incredible mobilization of the alumni network across our partner institution. And we saw some initiatives related to online tutoring, for example, for academics courses in mathematics and all sciences courses, for example. And this is really, really great and very impressive. And if I may take this opportunity that to say that we will need also to think more broadly by addressing, this question also to the diaspora network here, because each of us, we have been also part of those. I mean, we went in those universities in the past. For example, myself, I studied in Ivory Coast, before coming to Canada. So what can we do in order to support those students coming from rural areas, without any knowledge in digital, meaning how to even start a computer or study, online, and how to copy. So we think that the diaspora can play an important role there. So it might be very interesting to see, how we can take, this initiative, each of us, and support the partner universities, but also the students in those countries in order to bridge this gap in digital, for example. So this is something that we are very interested in. So maybe Patrick, you can share also your experience with HEC, because HEC and ALU are also part of our network of partners, so it will be interesting as well. Thank you.
Right. So Kofi, that's a really good question. And I would say that, pre-COVID, we've been engaged with alumni in bringing them into the classroom. I talked about our Giving Voice to Values course, where they bring in real world cases. We use alumni sort of as our ears and eyes on the ground. They help us see around corners about what's coming up in industry. They mentor students and so on. Now, post-COVID and the switch to online, a number of interesting things have happened, right? So one is we on the one hand got this incredible opportunity to re-engage alumni through some online master courses, master classes that had been made available to the HEC community. So suddenly alumni were suddenly benefiting from this free resource, some certification programs on Facebook for digital marketing also was 100% discounted, and alumni got the benefit of that. And then the other really interesting thing is that, suddenly we were having to do alumni events online, and it's easier to actually have one event and have alumni from Ghana, Senegal, and Kenya in the same event. And so suddenly our reach to alumni actually has been made easier, which we wouldn't have done that naturally ourselves because we tended to do sort of in-person alumni events. And so we're seeing online events with alumni, online fundraising events that they themselves are organizing with each other. And then the really remarkable thing that has also happened is that we had to enroll a freshman class that was starting online, right, completely from scratch. And so this meant that we had to get them up on our systems remotely. We had to, ship laptops to them. We had to get them up to speed on how to connect to our online resources and all of that. And alumni helped us a great deal in that outreach. So if we had a cohort of alumni in Kenya helping us with the freshmen who had been enrolled in Kenya and in Zimbabwe and other countries. And this was I mean, without the alumni, this would have been such a difficult task for us, and they really stepped up to the plate. So in an interesting way, this time has actually re-energized our alumni even more than they were before this crisis.
Okay, it sounds as if there are some lessons learned, you discover some opportunities that you need to continue even when we get back to normal. Am I right about that?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, we did.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, please, Kofi, if I may add something very quickly. Hello, can I? Yeah. Can I add? Okay, great. It might be also interesting to encourage, this culture of alumni in public universities with a big size of students, for example, because this could be also very impactful. So the experience from HSC that Patrick shared with us is very important and very interesting. And it might be also important, to share more experience or maybe encourage, this culture of tapping into the alumni network in order to support, public institutions which receive, for example, subsidies from government. I'm thinking about public universities in the Francophone space, for example. So it might be very interesting to have this experience as well. Thank you.
All right, so the next question, we've talked about how this might have affect the ways in which we're delivering education, but I wanted to see if you had any learnings about kind of basic operations, right, and real advantages in terms of that can stay with you. Even in a normal environment, that you've learned out of necessity. So for an example would be that assumptions about how much people need to physically show up, right? There's some jobs that you may find can be done quite well remotely. And much more efficiently. And in fact, it's easier for people because a lot of people's lives are made difficult by having to commute, right? And you have maybe access to a broader array of talent. Are there any examples that in terms of how you actually just kind of operate administratively that have come through that any of you have seen?
Well, Kofi, you mentioned the classic one, right? So actually, we are actively speaking with heads of department, both administratively and on the faculty, about what positions can be more permanently online, right? And certainly, and there'll be positions that are not going to be 100% online, but they're going to be significantly more online than before. So they'll come in occasionally to touch base with teams and so on. But it's very clear to us that there's a lot that can happen that people can do remotely. And so we're actively looking at how we incorporate that more into our structure. But also, the alumni example I gave you, also examples about reaching some of our supporters. There are people who, we have this annual deep dive event that we do at Ashesi, and friends of Ashesi come to visit Ghana. And this year we weren't able to do that, but we did an online version where they were able to still interact deeply with faculty and students online. And interestingly, there's so many people who participated who would truly appreciate being able to do that without traveling thousands of miles to Ghana. And so that's also another example of something that we will continue to do moving forward, is that realizing that we can reach out further and to more people online in the future, even after this crisis is over.
Diane, have you seen anything in terms of how you operate as a philanthropy and with this real focus you have on education that you've learned through this experience?
Thank you, Kofi, for this question. This is an interesting one, and what we notice since the beginning of the crisis is the shift in the business models, you know, of some universities and some universities, and this is very interesting because we are advancing also e-learning and learning, you know, in those countries where we are located, where we have our different hubs. But something which is very interesting is the partner universities we are working with also understanding the needs of online learning, but high quality online learning with relevant content, and this model of blended learning, if I can put that in that way, is very strong, because the future of education would be blended by offering, you know, flexibility in the way, you know, students are learning from anywhere, you know, at any time, in order to enroll, you know, more students and keep more students, meaning we really want to decrease the rate of dropout students, and online learning offer, you know, this flexibility, you know, to students in those universities, for example. Thank you.
Okay, let me unmute myself. I've had an opportunity to talk with a number of grant-making foundations that have found that they can almost they can operate almost the same way in this environment. The difficulties, though, have to do with kind of due diligence. Those kinds of things. Are you finding that also that's a challenge, but in other areas people have much more flexibility? Okay, Demilade, what have you learned from this?
Okay, so I guess for me, it's much like Patrick, I think, mentioned. I think one of the things as well is we have had to bring on teammates. So a number of my teammates came into the institution just when COVID, the onset of COVID arrived. And so this teammates are working from across different places in the continent and outside the continent. And in some kind of way, maybe because we haven't had the physical experiences, I don't miss it a lot, because it still works. It still works, right? We are able to collaborate, we're able to get on calls, we're able to work at any time. And I think the implication of that, like you were saying, for an organization is that is something that can become a way to get talent from all over and not necessarily have everybody on the ground. I think also, interestingly, just as we've said, we're able to bring in people, colleagues, to collaborate in the classroom, people from other universities, guest speakers. That flexibility is there with online learning. And I also think that thankfully, I am in Kigali. It's not a very big place. Like when I used to be in Lagos, I used to take 2 to 3 hours to commute to work, right? But I can imagine for people who have to do that commute, that they are a lot more productive. And I think for me as well, there's that productivity in terms of time that I have, because if I'm going to go to work every day, I'm going to have to prepare and just go hit the road and spend time thinking about. So all that taken away, I'm able to go from prep, for example, going to deliver a class session, move into another session. So those advantages are there. Of course, it doesn't come without the disadvantages like distraction and fatigue and a number of other things. But I think that long term as well, a number of more people will be opting to work this way, teach this way. And so it will create space within the institutions as well to create those opportunities, even when things return to the kind of normal that we thought we've always had. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think there's one last question from the audience before I think we wrap up with any closing remarks you have. And it has to do with online degrees. I'm going to expand it a little bit. I think there's something called the ADIS convention, which is trying to get more countries to have uniform requirements that are accepted. I think there's about, last I looked, there are about 12 or 13 countries that had signed up. Is this something that any of you have heard of any new developments in? Because in a more of an online world, this creates more opportunity for students to find good courses and to enroll in more institutions than they had the opportunity to before. So the question is on the floor.
Okay, well, so the one thing I can say about that is that as we shifted to online, we've had to report to the accreditation authorities about how we've made that shift and how learning is happening. And we're having to do all the work in quality assurance monitoring and feeding that data to the accrediting authorities. And so I can see that it's quite possible that as they get that data in from our institution and others that have done online courses, that will better enable them to come to some conclusion or some idea about what a standard online course ought to look like and be accrediting programs that are 100% online. But that's yet, I mean, that remains to be seen how this will all evolve.
Okay, Diane, any thoughts on this?
Thank you, Kofi. I think Patrick covers very well this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. Demilade?
I also have nothing to add because the reality with ALU as well in Rwanda is we are also having to work with the Higher Education Council and the Ministry of Education to now say, this is what we did during online learning and these are the opportunities, and continue to show that evidence, right? So I think that we also as institutions play a role in supporting the policy makers, especially in adopting this online learning as a way to go. So I think that role of feedback is important that we give as well. Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's an opportunity for any closing remarks that you have. Deanne, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Thank you so much, Kofi, and the African Diaspora Network for this opportunity to contribute. What I would suggest here are mainly 2 points related to First, investing high quality online education, which is safe because we are also looking into safeguarding, for the student, for the children, so this is very important. And also the bigger issues that I mentioned before is something that we should also look into, meaning the connectivity and devices, because those 2 points and also the electricity components, because these two needs, if I can put that in that way, will require more of the intervention of the educational communities. So we need to talk to people in infrastructure, in the financial sectors as well, like banks, and also we need also to make concrete, the result from network like smart, this creative that Digital for Africa. So how to push and encourage, this kind of initiative and make them, happen for the students that succeed, in the world of work. So great webinar, and thanks so much for this great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Demile.
Yes, thank you so much, Kofi, again, and to Patrick, Stephen was gone, and Almaz as well. Grateful to have been able to share my thoughts. And I think if there's anything, there's a lot to be said, but I think that transforming education, making education accessible is a collaborative work. I think there's something the founder of VLP, Fred Swanika, says that we need to move just in case education, giving them education that they need, sort of just in time education, not just in case, that is, in case they need it in the future, right? And so everyone needs to be, number one, rethinking how we think about education traditionally. And I believe this will result in creating more spaces to educate and empower the young people on the continent, even outside of the very formal structures that we have. Because if there's anything that online is pushing us to, is to come up with very diverse models of education. I saw someone put in the chat and say, and ask the question about having regional universities. That's an interesting idea, because then if the content is online, then we can create spaces where people would be able to meet, for example, and practice and learn and interact and do peer work and engage. So we need that continuing critical mass. Is everybody, diaspora, investors, educators, and NGOs. Yeah, so thank you again. It's a pleasure to be with this.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're getting a little interference, but we could hear you. So Patrick, would you like the last word?
Sure. So I would just like to, just a last word to people in the diaspora who are looking to engage. The MasterCard Foundation has a really fantastic model, I think, of engaging deeply with partners on the ground who are deeply embedded in the work that they're doing. And I think that if you're in the diaspora trying to engage, looking for organizations and individuals that you can engage with that closely is a really good way to go, and learning from them as much as you can. The other thing is, it's always a good idea to listen actively to the people that you're trying to serve. And when I say listen actively, one example that I'd like to share is a time I actually walked into one of the biggest slums in Accra, actually on two separate occasions, one during the day and one at night. just, in the daytime, I got somebody there to give me a tour of the place and tell me how things work there. At night, I just went quietly and just observed. But when you sort of listen that actively, you get a better sense, because I know, I have students from that community. And it's good to really have a much better feel and understanding for their circumstance if you want to serve that community. And so as much as it might be uncomfortable, if you're in the diaspora, when you come on a visit home, go out of your comfort zone and go observe deeply something that you might not have seen before, because it will affect how you engage on the continent and serving communities here. But partnership, working deeply with people who are on the ground here and listening very actively.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. And thank you also, Agnieszka and Almaz, for inviting us and convening this conversation. And thank you, Demilade and Deanne, for some really thoughtful remarks and observations. Hope all of you have enjoyed it as much as I have. I believe we will, there'll be opportunity for additional networking, but I'll hand it over to you, Almaz, to explain what happens next.
Thank you, Kofi. While I speak, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. We like to do these polls. Please fill them out, because we want to know how we can help or support HSC and others. And I think your input will matter a lot. It's wanting to talk about the issues that people are facing in Africa and around the world in so many ways, given what COVID has created. But it's also another thing for us diasporans to know how to better support and be a part of the efforts that Patrick, and then in his own way, Kofi at AAI, Damilade, and also Diane and Stefan are putting forward. So I think it's very important for us to know. So keep filling that out. And I also wanted to say thank you to all of you for being a part of this conversation. I know we do ask you to do a lot, but we found the, as sad as it is that we don't see each other, because I'm a touch and feel person, but I also found a tremendous opportunity to connect with my people from the continent via Zoom. And so I'm very grateful to all of you who are making it, even when the connections are not, the best. And in fact, it is one of the things that I'm noticing is what can we do with the diasporans to support those who are in need in the continent, especially to faster internet, what needs to be done. I saw a question earlier about changing the infrastructure. I'm sure that will be, it's possible, but how do we engage those with the means to make that possible? So I think this is an ongoing discussion. We might not be able to solve all the problems, but I do believe that we will be able to support in whatever way we can. And I encourage you to give to AAI, to support HSC, to do the best you can to support efforts that you believe in, because it's only when we get engaged and we put some part of us in the work that we care about that we feel we are part of it. And I think it's very important for us to be engaged. And so I want to thank you for being always engaged with us. I just counted, it's our 5th African Diaspora Investment webinar for this year, but altogether we've started in April and we're moving forward, and we will end on January 27, 2021, when we celebrate 10 to 12 African diaspora builders of Africa's future. These are entrepreneurs from all over the continent. We've come so far that we have already identified few of the 10 of them, or maybe about 12 of them. And I want to thank to the supporters for making this possible, but also the Builders of Africa's Future Committee. What I would like to do now is ask Agnieszka to join me to close the day, but also I will end the poll. I think we're done. I also wanted to just shout out 4 MasterCard Foundation scholars at UC Berkeley, Martha, and your team. Thank you so much for all that you do. Agnieszka, for making this today's event and every event we do possible. To the board, to the team, special thanks to Megan Hans Berger for her partnership with me and for being such a wonderful help to ADN. So I would leave you there, and then after Agnieszka finishes speaking and closing out the session, what we have a half an hour free networking opportunity, and we will stay. Whoever wants to leave though would be free to leave after Agnieszka. Agnieszka, thank you.
Well, first of all, a deep, deep thank you to Almaz for organizing all of this. An enormous amount of work goes into a program like this. And special thanks to, of course, Patrick and Kofi and Stefan, Diane, Damelade, for a really stimulating discussion. I'd like to add that I am always blown away by the quality of the discussion and engagement that happens on the chats. And what that tells me is that you find this very, very useful, helpful, interesting, and that you want to be engaged. And the way to be engaged, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you one more commercial, is to support the organization that makes it all possible and can do more if you help support us. So please remember to do your homework, become a member today, and consider a Christmas gift, as a number of you already have during the course of this morning, for which we thank you very much, because the whole power of the organization is all of your participation. So thank you very much, and it's an honor and pleasure to spend the morning with you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will stay as long as you're here. You can start chatting through. Ask your questions, whatever you feel like you want to say. Usually at this time, we stop the recording so that people can feel free to ask any questions, and hopefully you would. And if you leave, it's okay too. Thank you.